Well, it's a good evening from Queensland. In fact, it's on a catamaran doing a trip from Gold Coast up to Darwin. Currently, we're at Cape Upstart. It's only about 100 kilometres south of Townsville. So we're a little snug as the bugs here. And so this sunset's just gone down. And so it's my privilege to introduce Andrena. We haven't seen each other for a couple of weeks because of Easter and other holidays. But she's come across a tremendous guy. And I've just been having a chat behind the scenes. Without further ado, it's over to you, Andrena.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Good morning, good day. Welcome, everybody who's tuned in to Dreaming the New Dream, or if you're listening to the replay. It's the 8th of May today, and I would like to welcome Michelangelo Chiecchi to the show today. Welcome, Michelangelo.
Thank you very much, and greetings to everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting you in Glastonbury, I don't know, 2 months ago. I've lost track of time.
Yes. It was in March. In March.
March, was it?
Yeah.
All right. 2 months. Yeah. So, and I'd heard all about your work and Giovanni's and Pauline. And anyway, we connected with you. And I mean, you're a master of martial arts, you're a gifted reflexologist, kinesiologist, and so much more. You've developed the natural life system, and you've got like 5 decades of health. So really, can we start at the beginning? Because I know you shared in your bio about having 120 injections as an infant, and obviously that's your gift to the world that's brought you to all the things that you've done now. So would you like to start from the beginning, and we'll just let things unfold as we go along?
Yes. I was the firstborn of a big family, and my mother had a problem in calcium for the hip when she was a child. When she delivered me, I was breastfed perfectly up to the 8th month, and I was growing very well, perfectly. But when I was at the 8th month, she discovered that she was pregnant of the second child, my sister. So the doctor obliged her to stop breastfeeding, because at that time, maybe even now, there is the fear that in the breastfeeding, the woman loses calcium, and then she could have also worse problem with the fetus and with her hip and everything. So immediately, abruptly, she stopped breastfeeding me. Immediately in the next few days, I lost the few teeth I have already sprung out. And she was telling me that my bones were like the plasticine. You could bend. I was without calcium. I lost the calcium. It was not only a matter of food, but it was also a shock, because the breastfeeding for the child is the fuel for the growth, not only physically, but also emotionally and spiritually. But maybe I needed that experience, because through the pain and through the shocks and through the things that we consider ugly and terrible, we may learn to develop our qualities. So anyhow, there was a nurse who was coming to my house in the morning when she was going to the hospital to work, and in the evening when she was coming back from the hospital, and she was giving me an injection of calcium in the morning and in the evening. And after 2 months, so far I was 10 months old, she stopped. She decided to stop, and she said, "We are torturing this little baby. If he has to leave, he will leave." She was very wise, at least. And she said, "I refuse to keep on giving the injections." At that time, my parents got shocked, but my grandmother, who was living in the mountains, on the border with Switzerland, she came down and she asked my mother to take this baby, and she took me in the mountains, and there she was making for me a sort of rice milk, breaking it in the mortar and maybe cooking it, and she was putting me at the sun in a special cradle, all protected by the wind, on the big balcony in my house, in the family house. And in 2 months, I practically recovered and I was okay. But this was the first big shock in my life, and the example of a materialistic science, how approaches the human body. We would say not only the body, soul, spirit, all the entity which the body is. And then I grew up with this unconscious fear of doctors, because as a child, when I was seeing nurses and doctors, I was hiding myself, I was running away. Then I grew up with no big problems, except when they put me in the boarding school. My father was dreaming that I would become a doctor, because in that moment in Italy, to be a doctor was a very higher social position. But then when I finished this was an important way to be. There was only this school to become a doctor. So I told him I did not want to become a doctor because of all the implications. And then I disappointed him. So then in order not to fight with my father, I asked the teacher of my aunt, who was a Lithuanian psychologist, who was teaching in Italy during the war, and then she flew to Canada to avoid to go back to Lithuania, where she would have been killed. So she went in Canada, and then slowly in Canada she became a psychology teacher. She was already, she was among the founders of the Catholic University in Italy. And I asked if I could join her in Canada to stay away from my father. And she accepted me in Canada in 1972, 71, when I finished the boarding school. And there I approached the first step in the health, in a different health way. She gave me to read Dr. Bach book, Heal Thyself, and she was following Herbert Shelton's directions about health. So I don't know if you're familiar with Herbert Shelton. He was one of the greatest natural healers, teachers in the 20th century. He had a center in Bonita Springs in Florida, and she was going impaired children, which the most intelligent become psychologically impaired in this society. It's another big issue that we should always consider. So she was starting to give, to stop the animal food, the sugar, the processed food, the dairy products, and everything to the children. And when they were in the center in the University of Ottawa, they were getting very good results. But as soon as they were back home, they were coming back exactly like they were before. So I was assisting her, and she was desperate, because it's so difficult to make people aware that we are not done for certain foods which are awfully and magnanimous offered by the normal society. So far, alcohol, coffee, sugar, milk and dairy products, they are the milestones, the pillars of this society. And then if you like to go on, you can understand why we have all this disaster. There is also a root in this nutrition that we have adopted as civilized human beings, because we have been affected also by the science. But anyhow, at that time, I was not so wide conscious of all this, but I was like a sponge. I was absorbing all the informations, and I was keeping them because I was intrigued by the observation of Herbert Shelton and her observations in this field. Then 1 year later, I had to come back to Italy, otherwise they would be considering me a deserter in the army because I did not have the Giovanni, sposta.
It's all right. It's okay.
Giovanni's
Sounds all right. It's all good.
This is life.
This is like normal life. And so I came back to Italy, and then I left my family because my father especially did not accept that I did not want to become a doctor, but I wanted to become a physical education teacher. And because I was keen in sports, and I was thinking at that time, 51 years ago, that the sport was one way to the health. Then I became a professor of physical education, but I realized that also the sport is very unhealthy. But anyhow, yes. But anyhow, I had to leave my family. I had to maintain myself doing every type of work. And I was lucky that at that time, I could support myself and pay my university and all my things. But 1 year later, I got very sick. I got very tired. And then I went to the doctor who was minding my team. I was a volleyball player at the time, quite famous in Italy as a youngster because he received also the prize, the award for 1971 for the best young athlete in volleyball. I have still the diploma after 52 years. But anyhow, I could not believe what he said. He sent me to the hospital, and at that time it was not the medicine like today, but every doctor, specialist who took care of me, they said that they all agreed that my liver was totally upside down. It was totally upset. And that's why I had all this lack of energy, not digesting. I was totally sluggish. I could not even get out of the bed in the morning. So they said that they were asking me if I was using drugs, if I was drinking. There was a liver like an alcoholic, just say, but I don't drink alcohol. I am a sportsman and I don't use drugs and everything. So they could not understand why I had the liver in such a condition. But the only agreement they had is this liver could not last more than 3 months. So they gave me the bill, the how can we say the decree that I was going to die in 3 months. I could not believe it. And they gave me some experimental medicine because I was becoming a guinea pig. But after I used this medicine, I felt much more sick and I said, oh, these people are going to kill me. And then in that moment, I got back to my memory, the experience with Agatha in Canada. So I started to put all what I remembered about the natural and hygienistic method of health. And but I was not totally aware of what I am aware now. And then in few months, I was getting better and better. Only after 3 months when I was following this and I was already almost reassured that I found the right way, that was the right medicine, I became so sick that I was thinking I was going to die. I was vomiting, I was cold sweat, really headache, dizziness, everything. But because I had decided not to go to the hospital, I said, okay, that's my age. 3 months are gone. The doctors were right. I'm going to die in my room. But I did not die. I passed out. And then 1 day later, I woke up and I felt my body was practically new. And this, I thought it was almost a miracle. I could not believe it. I did not have the concept of a healing crisis that now I emphasize every time I teach to my students. But after this, I was feeling so good and I could not believe it. So I had also to give the examinations in the physical education university, and I did very good performance. And my colleagues were saying, what did you do? Did you have taken some stimulants, excited? No, I was feeling very good. Only In these 6 months in which I stood in this system, I was not eating practically all the normal food. I was not drinking Coca-Cola. I was not eating ice creams. I was not eating cheese, which I was fond, because naturally as a child, I was avoiding the meat. It was like an offense to me. The meat I could not stand. You know, it's like to eat a corpse, a dead body. You know, I cannot, the smell and everything. I was running away. And my mother was crying because she could not, she was a teacher in the villages, so she was taking her students to babysit me and telling them that they have to make me eating because I was not eating properly. I remember once she was telling me, crying, please at least a little bit of liver, because the liver is rich of vitamin B12. And this is another story of the science. You know, one day, maybe if we have time, we can speak about this also, because all through my life, I developed through the experience and connecting with the informations, I developed what is the system of natural life, which comes back to nature and the laws of nature, which rule all the living beings, and especially the human beings are like animals in a way. Physically, we are like the animals, but we have a difference from the animals, as the great philosophers, they state, because we have the mind. But why do we have the mind a difference from the animals? Because the animals cannot do mistakes, when with the mind we can do the mistakes in order to recognize what is right and what is wrong, and then correct, and then become aware of the perfections of the laws of nature, which guide us constantly, even if our mind is like a fussing baby, does not like a certain limitations, because we have been already polluted, we have been already deceived as children to get the wrong stuff. And now I'm speaking only on the physical level, then we can arrive to the emotional level and to the psychic and spiritual levels. But I want to go by steps, because when you study the healing process, which, well, I hear always people speaking about healing, but the first healing is the sickness. And if you don't understand this, you cannot go further into the realm of what I'm teaching, because all of us, we are scared of the sickness, and we hang on the world of the official science, which considers the sickness as in the 1700 an injustice of the universe, a mistake of nature, something wrong with nature, which has to be corrected by the human mind. We go back to the 1700. So that's why it became very important to study the philosophy, because without philosophy, we cannot understand what we are doing, from where we are coming and where we are going and where we are now. That's very important. In this moment, we have been kept in a supreme ignorance, because with the ignorance, people can be scared, can be afraid, can be manipulated and controlled. If you can understand what I'm saying, and that's what I'm doing in the last almost 50 years as a teacher, the very important part is to understand why we are like this today. So we have to study the history and to see when in history the mistakes occurred to lead us to what we are now. Because during the Middle Age, if you return to the history of the Middle Age, remember the people were scared about the witches and the wizards. You know, they were burning at the stake, wizards and witches, because they were considered evil. When the wizard and the witches, they were practically the alchemists. The alchemists, we knew a different chemistry, because the chemistry we study in the school is called chemistry, and does not apply to the living beings. Because, for example, the iron that we have in our blood does not come from the iron, but comes from the magnesium of the chlorophyll. The calcium that, pardon me?
Oh, no, that's interesting.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. And the calcium that we use in our kidney for our bones and for the electrical circuits and everything, this is coming from the silicon. In fact, the silicon is the element which connects the mineral world with the vegetable world. Because the silicon already, it can be capable of regeneration. In fact, the Silicon Valley is where they use the silicon to produce the microchips in silicon, because the silicon has the power to regenerate, which in the minerals is not yet happening. But this is the bridge, between the mineral and the vegetables. Like then after the vegetables, you have at the end of the vegetables, you have the mushrooms, which have already a sort of psychic frequency. In fact, many people are using peyote, these mushrooms, because the strong ones, they have a strong psychedelic effects. To arrive then to the animal world, and at the end of the animal world, there is the human being, and before the human being, there is the pig. That already in the BBC 10 years ago they made a survey or a show in which they were saying that through biology they discovered that the human being and the pigs, they came from the same genes. In fact, the pigs are animals which have the possibility to look in the future, and they see 3 days in advance when they're going to be killed. That's why in the ancient traditions, but also the Muslims and the Jewish, they don't eat pork meat, not because of hygiene problems, because there was the knowledge that you eat a meat that is full of the stress and the adrenaline and the emotions of the animal which has been killed after 3 days of sufferance, fear, stress before being killed. So then, I already start to put in front of you the issue of the emotions in the food, because each food can be a transporter of emotions or frequencies, because everything can be related to a frequency. We are a frequency, an individual which is with his own frequency, and this comes back to the spleen, which is the organ that is most unacknowledged in the medical world, because it's considered useless, when in the energetical world, the spleen is the most important organ for our individuality, for our characteristics, for our whoever we are, And more we use the wrong food for our body, more we stress the spleen to use this energy to try to keep the unity and our identity, and then we lose very subtle qualities which range from the knowing ourselves and so on to the emotional, spiritual, psychic, spiritual levels. In fact, I would like to remind you that on the temple of Apollo in Delphi, on the ancient Turkey, there was on the frontispiece, on the top of the temple, there was the engraving Gnotis euton in Greek, which is in Latin Gnose te ipsum, in English know yourself, which is the most important thing. If we don't know who we are, we tend to treat ourselves, to use ourselves, to behave ourselves very far from our nature. For example, if you have a car which runs with a normal petrol, if you put the diesel petrol, you spoil it. So if you don't know, you can do this mistake. But if you know what it is, you would never do this mistake. You protect your car. The same, I see people which have an incredible qualities, abundance of qualities, they spoil their qualities, polluting their bodies with all sorts of intoxicants and wrong food. So maybe they need, as Buddha says, they need to do the experience. So if they are aware, they are open, they can learn to wake up and change, and not treat themselves as or tractors or aggressive agents and everything, and recognize that we are divine beings, and the energy which makes us is a loving energy, but not the sentimental love, the real love. And then you learn from nature what is the real love when you study the animals. The mother, the female, when she's mother, she is able to give the right love to their cubs or to the children. When we are more emotional, and I always do the test with the people and say, if you are on the plane and the oxygen masks come down, and what do? You have a child besides you. Who is the first to get the mask? The majority of the people tell me, the baby. And I say, no good. Because if you put the mask of the baby, in the meantime, you can faint or you can lose consciousness. Then the baby has the mask, but you are not anymore useful to the baby. So the priority is the mother or the adult, which has to keep the strength and the consciousness, and then can attend the baby. So we are like this. Also, our culture has given us with the guilt, the sensation that we have to sacrifice, and then sacrificing ourselves, we don't have the right perspective of the social relationship and affective relationships and intimate relationships. Anyhow, this starts to become a very wide subject. So then when
very wide.
Very wide. I feel almost losing myself because I was trying to give you my story. So when I arrived, when I finished the physical education university, I was chosen by one of the professors who was the director of all the hospitals in Milano to become his assistant. He saw in me some of the qualities he needed to have, let's say, his successor. So he obliged me to apply to the medical school. And only because I loved him so much, I did also this. And I started to attend the medical school. So I did it for 5 years. But after 5 years, unfortunately, this great man was killed by the terrorists. It's called Red Brigade. We had in Italy this period. It was terrible, Then it comes out that this period was also financed by these elites to create fear in the population and to start to disrupt the normal right ways to behave in the society. So they killed him. They shot him under his house when he was coming out of the garage. And I lost my mentor. And from that moment, I felt free and I did not want to go on with the medical university. I was at the 5th year. And then I met again Agatha in Milano after 10 years. And she had a problem with the right shoulder. And when I saw her, because she was advocating and supporting at the maximum the right use of the hand, because we have the left, in the left brain, we have the center of the language, which is ruling all the learning and the practical things, So with the left center of the language, we control the right side of the body. And when I was speaking with her, I was telling about the current psychology says that the child can choose the left or the right. They are right. Now there is the gender, it's crazy. You can choose to be anything. And for me, it's really comedy. It's a comedy. You are a blender. You are male, you are female. There is a confusion. Thank God that Trump, when he went up to the power, said, no more all this confusion. But the confusion is useful because people are not, they lose the awareness of themselves. But anyhow, I told her, Agatha, did you change your theory? Now you're using the left. And she said, no, I use the left because during the winter in Canada, I slept on the external stairs of my house. I hang on the rail bar and I dislocated my shoulders. And now it was in June, it was already 7 months, and she could not find anybody to repair it. And she could go to all the orthopedics, chiropractors, anything. She tried everything in North America, and she said, I cannot move it. So I said, and she was asking, what are you doing? What is your life now? And I said, if you like, I can show you. It's better than explain. I do a little treatment on your feet, and let's see if your shoulder will start to move. And then in that period, I was very good in this because it's a German doctor who discovered this technique of reflexology, which is Walter Frönenberg. And he developed this technique, which is probably the most painful, but only people who have the facial paralysis or the frozen shoulder, they can accept such a pain on the feet. And believe me, it works. I have all cases, 100% cases, resolution. So I gave her half an hour of this treatment, and slowly she said, I feel like a tingling in my shoulder. I feel a tingling in my arm. Her arm was blocked, to the chest, to the belly. And after half an hour, she could touch her head and she started to cry. She said, it's 7 months that I cannot touch my head. I cannot wash my head with the right hand. So at that time, I said, but maybe you need 2 or 3 more treatments. It's not perfect what we did. Yes, he said, but I'm giving lectures in Florence, in Venice, and I have this tour all over Italy. And I said, but I cannot follow you. I'm working here in Milano. You should better come back every night and I'll give you the treatment. So she was having these lectures in all these main towns in Italy. And in the evening, she was back to Milano, and then I was meeting her. I was giving the treatment. And after 3 treatments, her shoulder was already perfect. And she could not believe it. So then she invited me to be in Canada to teach this, because she had a private school also for children with learning disabilities. She had also the biggest names, the children of the actors, politicians. Even Trudeau was in her school, unfortunately. Yeah. And so I was there for 1 month, but all these teachers did not like what I was suggesting and what to do. So then I went with her to Washington. She had a congress, and in Washington I spent 7 days watching the Smithsonian, which was my dream. And of 7 days, I spent 6 days in the Aviation Museum. It was in 81. It was very early now. They told me it's 4 times bigger. That's another dream I would like to fulfill as soon as I can, time-wise, to spend as much as I can, because I love aviation. And for me, it's an important school and discipline, where you learn that you cannot do what you want. You have to stay with the rules, and if you stay with the rules, you are safe. And if you stay with the rules of nature, you're also safe. Only the problem is that we have been brought up with the idea that we can do with our mind what we want. And I also was, as you mentioned, I was a martial art teacher. And I had a beautiful experience with a Japanese teacher, Koichi Toei, who developed the coordination of mind and body, which is exactly the opposite of what that we do now in the West. We use the body to still the mind, to fix the mind. So we have to do spatial exercises, becoming aware of the energy in the body, and then we can stop the mind, which is the biggest interference with ourselves and with our performances. So when it was in 1978, it was quite a long time ago, but it was one of the biggest experiences for the change of the use of the body, which I did. I was already following Shelton's, but not so perfectly, because I was also coming from the idea that once in a while you can do, in Latin they say semel in anno licet insanire. Once a year is possible also to do crazy things. No. I learned also that this is against my best interest, so I don't fall into this Latin saying. So then with Agatha, I was there. We came back from Washington D.C., and 2 days later I had to go back to Italy. But her best assistant, she came in the morning for the breakfast. He was totally disrupted. The face was totally in agony. And I said, "What's happening, Jack?" And he said, "I have a toothache, which I went to the dentist already twice. They opened the tooth because there was a cavity years and years ago, but the tooth is perfect. But I have a pain which is unbelievable. I cannot sleep. I cannot do anything." So because that's part of what we do with me and Giovanni, because if you study the body in a real way, not the science way, you study that each tooth is the terminal, is the ending, is the fuse of a meridian, of a acupuncture meridian, which runs all over the body. And that's why we cannot treat the teeth as a pure material, let's say like rock entities, They are fully integrated in the energy of the body. So I told him, "Don't worry, give me your feet." In half an hour, I gave him the treatment, and the pain was totally disappeared, because this was the spleen meridian, which was going in the middle toe. And I asked him also, "But do you have many worries in this period? Do you have stress?" And yes, he said, "I know that's the problem of your pain. Is not mechanical, is energetical." And then feeling so well after the session, he said, "I want to learn this." I say, "Yes, but tomorrow I will leave. I have already the plane to go back to Italy." So then I want to come during the Christmas holidays, if you don't mind. And then it was in 81, I remember. No, 81, 82, Christmas holidays. And he went there, and I had also beautiful experience with him, because he was an ex-flyer in the Canadian Air Force, and he was dispatched in Germany in the early 60s. And he was. We had that period. There was the austerity in Italy. I remember the government, how many crazy things that. So they were obliging us to shut off the heating during the night. And I was living in a house which was at the first floor, and underneath there was a porch with all the wind and the cold. So my house, after half an hour after the heating was off, it was cold. But then marble floors, crazy. And then the second night, I see from my room, I see in the corridor the lights. I say Jack has left the light on in the corridor. So I got up from the bed, and I see that he was jumping, he was doing exercise, and say, "Why do you do that?" "Yeah, because I try to warm myself up, because my feet are so cold." I had also in Germany, during the summer, I have to wear woolen socks because my feet have always been so cold. Okay, I said, "Okay, we can do also something very good for you." It's called connective tissue treatment. It's a special technique in which you pull with the fingertips the skin, and you create a nervous stimulation which activates the autonomic nervous system. And this autonomic nervous system is the one which balances all the organs and the functions in the body. So I said, now we work on the lower back. So giving this treatment, we open all the energy down to the feet, and you will feel probably the energy going down. So I started to do this pulling on his lower back, and he was feeling the energy going down to the ankle. And say, after half an hour, I said, you can go to sleep because now the energy will keep on going. In the morning, we woke up and I told him, how are your feet? He said, I'm warm up to the ankle bones, but the feet are still cold. I say, okay, this night, we will do more. So make sure that the energy will arrive to the feet. So we started that, and we gave him also the treatment in the evening. And when he felt the energy arriving in the feet and warming up, he said, we keep on doing another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just to make sure, to be sure. And then he said, okay, I feel very good. Let's go to sleep. Okay, we go to sleep. In the evening, I am sleeping. Then I woke up and I see the light again in the corridor. I say, oh my God, what's happening? And I get up and I see him walking bare feet on the marble floor because his feet were too hot. He said, I never experienced that. Never experienced that. This is to give you this example so you can understand also the techniques that I'm using in order to support the energy in the body, because we are made of energy. And if we are able to move the energies in the right way, we keep the body much healthier and more resilient and more lasting than what the normal science is giving us. It does not give opportunity. The science, unfortunately, is let's say, proclaiming that they want to elongate the length of life. In reality, is shortening the life, because in 1989 in Toronto, I was there. In Canada, I was working also there in 89. There was the Congress of the Cancer Oncology World Concert, or World Oncology the Congress, and the final document, which is not available anymore, they made it disappear in it. It was available up to 15, 20 years ago. Now you don't find anymore. But the final document of this Congress was stating that they arrived to recognize that the normal treatments, let's say chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, they only diminish the life expectancy of the patient. And this was already recognized and confirmed in 1989, so 36 years ago. But nobody keeps in count this, because there are supreme interest of the multinational companies, the chemical pharmaceutical companies, because they need sick people to sell their products. In their products, they can make the symptoms disappear. But if you follow my teachings, the symptom is the way the body is trying to keep the balance and handling the mistakes which we have done. And that's why it becomes paramount the importance to recognize what are the mistakes and correct them. Otherwise, if we keep on doing the mistakes, we oblige the body to try to deal in order to survive, because in the body there is a inbuilt program to stay alive. So in the body, the program is to stay alive, and everything which upsets or disrupts or disturbs the health obliges the body to respond with what we call the sickness. So instead of fighting the sickness, we have to study the sickness, what messages are given, and then correct the mistakes which we have made. This is what people have hard time to learn, to accept, because we have our comfort zones, and sometimes it seems a big sufferance or a big sacrifice to correct certain what we call mistakes, which for them are not so difficult. Well, for them are not big mistakes. They consider small, let's say, like drinking coffee, drinking alcohol, eating animal food, eating the nightshades like the potato, tomato, eggplants, peppers, many other things, that we will teach at the right moment. But just to give you an overall view that there is an incredible amount of mistakes that we do without being aware, even directed by the science, because the science has discovered the chemistry, and so they use the chemistry. Remember my mother was telling me to eat the liver because it's rich of vitamin B12. One second. And then they think that we get the vitamin B12 by the vitamin B12 itself. So we kill the animals because in the vegetable world, they don't find easy the vitamin B12. When in reality, and I did all these experiments in Canada in the 80s, the vitamin B12 comes in our body from the transformation of the vitamin C in the liver. If the liver is charged, is clean, and is working, his performance is to transform the vitamin C into vitamin B12. In fact, we should ask all the herbivorous animals how can get all this amount of vitamin B12 that they eat only grass. In the grass, there is only the most common vitamin is the vitamin C. But then the animals don't keep the liver busy with all the mistakes that we are doing, like the tomato, the milk products, the coffee, the alcohol, and not only the physical level. Remember that the liver is regarded as an organ which is a charger, is a motor also of emotional energies. So the energies which destroy the liver, which are also the signal that the liver is very imbalanced, is the impatience, the intolerance, the anger, frustration. And then when you see this, you can recognize that this liver is already, maybe physically it is not yet imbalanced, but already energetically is quite imbalanced. So when the energy of the liver is lost, then these changes of element are not easy to be done. And I saw many people, also in my clients, when they enter in a huge stress, in a huge, let's say, maybe through a divorce, through a big fight with neighbors or the work and everything, they got the deficiency of vitamin B12 and anemia and loss of iron because the liver cannot do this change. Then you give them the hemoglobin, you give the blood, or you give, and it's crazy because you create more problems to the body. If you clean the liver, I saw, we were doing experiments in Toronto, in Ottawa and Toronto. We were taking the guinea pigs, we were giving the blood transfusion to the guinea pig. Instead of giving blood, we were giving the chlorophyll. And the guinea pigs were perfectly alive. And after 1 week, with a test of the blood was again blood. It was not chlorophyll because the body was doing this transformation. And we have to remember that the chlorophyll is also called the vegetable blood. And it has a similar structure, chemically is a similar structure, only in the center of this protein, there is magnesium instead of iron, which is in the blood. But iron and magnesium in our body can change in the opposite. So that's why if we eat the greens, the liver is okay. Also, we can eat the vitamin C, which is in every vegetable and in fruits especially. Then our body will do the transformation if the liver is not too much busy in heavy emotions. About this, I would like also to mention another incredible study which has been done by Louis Kervran, who was the director of the Academy of France for 16 years in the 80s. And he has stated and described the biological transmutation. There is a beautiful book that I don't know is still available. I found the last ones in Tokyo in the macrobiotic school where I was teaching a few years ago, because the Japanese don't read very easily the English. So these English books were still there with the dust on. I bought all of them because in the West they are not anymore available. And this book is very small book, is 120 pages. It's called Biological Transmutations from Louis Kervran. And this book, in this book, Kervran describes the changes in the body. The body does nuclear reaction at low temperature. So we are accepting now, because of the nuclear radioactivity, we accept that the uranium will become lead in few hundred years. The plutonium, the same. All the biological transmutation. It's not transformation. Yes, is the title of the book from Louis Kervran, because he has written many books. I have all of them, but if you want to study the normal books, you have to be a super chemist, a super physicist. Myself, I was finding sometimes difficulties because you have to follow all the formulas and the changes and everything. But this is a very handy book that has been also introduced by Michael Abeshera, Herman Ayara. These were the great macrobiotic teachers in the West, which I also have something to say to the macrobiotic, because it's still the wolf in the sheep's clothing, because it puts again the mind to decide what is the yin and what is the yang. You have to do, and that's terrible, because you don't listen to the body, you listen to the mind. And when in my system, the doctor is within, like Hippocrates was saying, that you have to recognize the doctor working in you like the animals. You see, the animals cannot do mistakes unless they are domesticated. And if you leave the wild animals, they don't get cancer, they don't get all this sickness unless they are, let's say, polluted by the pollution, the environmental pollution. And they don't eat what is not good for them. They recognize it. And I have to say that my son was the greatest teacher, because I was letting him choose the food. And I immediately saw that when he was eating something that was not good, he was spitting out. So he was not saying, don't eat. His body was telling him what it was being to be done, you know. And so far, I was telling you, I don't want to miss this part because it is interesting also maybe for our listeners. In the race which has the highest level of vitamin C in the blood, remember this, the highest level of vitamin C are the Eskimos. But
really?
Yes. And the Eskimos don't eat any fruits, any vegetables, because they can eat only meat or flesh, just the seals, the walrus, or the fish. And because in their temperature, the meat is the only way to survive, and the liver does the opposite transformation from the vitamin B12 of the animals and the fish, does the transformation into vitamin C. So that's incredible, but that's what Louis Kervran has found. And it is incredible because we don't understand who we are, and that's very important to reach this level of consciousness and awareness, that we are not done to do what the society has instructed us to do, because there is a project behind. I don't want to be a plotist, but They want to keep us in the ignorance, because if we become aware, we will discover the power within us, the divine power.
Mm.
And the first step is to clean as much as possible. When I saw the Tibetan monks who were doing the prophecies, you see that as soon as they enter in this state of opening to the dimensions, they need a towel, they clean constantly, and then it's because they feel that they are in the physical matter, they are dirty. So we need to clean, clean, clean. So then not only the physical body is clean, but also the emotional body, the mental body, the spiritual body, they benefit of this frequency. So then, speaking about the Eskimos, maybe I concluded the chapter of the biology and alchemy, which also the science has created such a contradiction. The raw food eaters. And the raw food eaters are another group of people, victims of the science, because the science says that certain vitamins, like the vitamin C, for example, above 45, 50 degrees, disappears and you don't find it anymore. But the problem is that in the alchemy of the process, I'm speaking always about alchemy, not chemistry. That's very important. It's very, very, very important to understand, because in the chemistry, you have like the Lavoisier law says nothing is created, nothing is destroyed, but everything is transformed. And this is the Lavoisier, the French chemist of the 1700s. But in the alchemy, remember Merlin the wizard, that you read in the stories, in the tales of the children. The secret of Merlin was to transform the lead into gold. But as you can transform the lead into gold, changing the electrons and the protons and the neutrons, the same you can do with all the other material. So that's why I know that we can also breed the food through the energy. I was leading groups of fasting, and Pauline, she was many times with me. She has done maybe 40 fastings with me. I did maybe hundreds, fasting, which can last from 1 week to, let's say, she did once 96 days, I did 80 days.
Wow.
Yes, because instead of getting the energy from the food, you get energy from other sources. Because we have to understand what is the food. The food is the vehicle, is the transporter of the energy of the sun, which has been accumulated like in a battery. And then we use this battery, we put in our body to use this energy of the sun, which has been accumulated in the vegetables. When we eat the animal food, this energy, this pure energy of the sun has been already used for the animal itself. So doing this, we get much less of this vital energy. That's why the Eskimos can eat only meat, because without meat they would not survive. But they live also very short life. They survive 40 years. Their lifespan, their average lifespan is between 40 and 44.
Wow.
And we should be already dead if we were Eskimos. But the Eskimo live there without any sickness, because their body is perfect for that environment. They go below 30, 40, and they survive. And they don't have heated houses, structure with all the comforts like we have, because we practically have an everlasting springs in our home. In the summer we cool down, in the evening, in the winter we warm up. Then we have to be, let's say, protected or dealing with the environment when we get out of the house. Also, we stay in the car. In the car, we have the air conditioning, we have the warming, the heating. So it's completely different. The Eskimos also show the incredible adaptability of the human being, which is the most intelligent. I remember my professor of biology who was always saying the intelligence is the capacity to adapt in the fastest and most optimal way to the situation. So the Eskimos can live in the environment of the North Pole, when if you bring a cow or a horse or a sheep or a goat or a zebra or an elephant in the North Pole, they would not survive because they cannot adapt to eat meat, the fishes and everything. So that's why we have to understand also through the language of nature what we should do and what we should respect. The human being can live in the hot weather, eating the vegetables and the fruits, and being up to the North Pole, can eat like the Eskimos, can eat the fish and the meat, And this shows how adaptable we are. And in this chapter, I would like also to mention, I don't know, maybe you have already heard about the group blood type groups, I was working with James D'Adamo, who was the founder of this in Canada more than 30 years ago. Now his son, Peter D'Adamo, has written again the books, and that's a good business. But the big mistake, let's say structural mistake in this study, because I worked 10 years, I was offering him all my data from my clients. And I was saying that I was also believing that the O type should be animal food eater, and the A type is the fully vegan, and the B type is in between. But an incredible story is my direct experience, because my mother was A type, my father was O type. We are 7 children alive. And the male, we are 3 male and 4 women, 4 girls. The 4 girls are all A type, and my 2 brothers are A type. I don't know what is my blood type because I don't give it. Okay, I don't care for knowing my blood type because I want to listen to my body without mental or technical interference. And I am already vegan for probably 50 years, 48 years. That's the last moment in which I had probably some animal food. And I was studying very carefully the D'Adamo study, who took the study also from Kretschmer and the German psychologists and biologists. During the Second World War, the Germans wanted to optimize the food resources, so they arrived to observe that the meat maybe can be more needed for the O type and the vegetables are more for the A type. The problem is that in that case, A type, according with what D'Adamo said, would not survive in the North Pole because he's obliged to eat meat. But the digestive system is very similar from the A type to the O type. Only there is a metabolic characteristic with the nervous system, with the digestive system, and probably I told James, but he did not want to listen to me. I said, the O type will adapt faster to the North Pole. The A type will be slower, but all of them, A, B, O, and A, B, whatever, they will survive in the North Pole eating the meat. But only in that particular situation, behaving like the Eskimos. So, and I had also a case who was D'Adamo's secretary, and she had a sort of eczema, and D'Adamo was telling her, you are O type, and you should eat a little bit of animal food. So she was eating some poultry, some yogurt and something during the week. And I told her, for me, you are not a clean O type. It's like in my family, my sisters are A type, and we male children, we are O type. But if you study the Mendel's laws, you see the factor are called dominant and recessive. So your O is the dominant, and maybe your parents were 1A and 1O, or some other different blood type, because we have many factors which can come out also from the history of the parents. Sometimes we have a case of people that come out with the genes similar to one ancestor that has been completely neglected for a long period. So I say, you have to listen to your body. She said, but I feel that I don't want the animal food. So why do you eat? No, because I am a O type. But you can be O type, but maybe you don't. Maybe I am O type. But if just the idea to eat meat gives me shivers, it's like as I told you once, eat corpses. My God, it's not my story. Okay, I saw Jeff. We are in time. Am I taking too long? Do you need to put questions? Tell me what. Maybe I'm taking too much time.
Michelangelo,
No, it's brilliant.
We've just been sitting here and observing the wisdom and knowledge that you've been handed out. It's just gold nuggets. Look, there are questions, and I put a post there to say, listen, I'm not putting the questions up because I'm just enthralled by listening to all the it's all sacred knowledge that you're revealing. It's fantastic. It's just awesome. People have been saying, can you do another, come on and do another show? And then other people have said, can you do a third one? So, I mean, you really hit the jackpot here, Michelangelo. It's really enthralling. I mean, I'm just listening to you it's Godspeed, bloody brilliant. You want me to put those questions up?
Please.
Just to break it up. Okay, hang on then. Mushrooms and nightshade.
No, mushrooms are mushrooms. The nightshades are the potato, tomato, eggplants, peppers, goji berry, tobacco, the lumquat, these small yellow sweet tangerines. They are very small. These are the nightshades. They are the revenge of the especially the tomato, the potato, and the peppers, also the aubergine. But aubergine came to Europe through Marco Polo, and in Asia they were known, so they were put under salt for a long period in order to use the salt as a sort of neutralizer of toxicity and poison. But when the Spanish invaded the New World, what is called America, they went there to conquer Christopher Columbus went there to conquer each land for the crown, from the Spanish crown. And he promised Queen Isabella that all the people that were conquered, they would become Christians, Catholic. So the second trip of Columbus, he did with the Inquisitor that was putting him under trial before having the fleet to go to America. And they did an awful lot of crimes. They killed people, crucified people, burnt people that did not want to buy into the new religion. So these people, they did not have weapons, they did not have anything, they did not have anything to defend themselves. Their best defense was to give them the nightshades. And if we study better history, we remember Pizarro and Cortes. They were called the conquistadores. They were the two generals that almost 25, 30 years after they were in charge of the conquer of the northern part and the southern part of America. And they went there with their ships full of weapons and soldiers, but they did not have women in the ships. So they were taking the local women as mistresses or whatever. And the soldiers, they had the normal women. But Pizarro and Cortes, they got the princesses, they were the shaman women. and the one who was with Cortés, she was really, let's say, revengeful to Montezuma, because Montezuma killed her family. So she instructed Cortés to conquer Mexico City, and with 200 soldiers only, and Mexico City at that time was 2 million people, Cortés, thanks her, conquered Mexico City, and then in order probably to gain his trust, she revealed, because she was a shaman, so she was an alchemist, revealed the effect of the nightshades. Only Cortés, and then after Pizarro, Francisco Pizarro, they received the same information from these medicine women, from these shaman women, and they wrote to the king letters, King of Spain letters, in which they were saying, be careful, because we got informations that the nightshades, tomato, potato, eggplants, peppers, tobacco, they are really dangerous. But the King of Spain, when he received, also they were not scientists to explain all the implication, which now we know. Only it's comfortable for this society creating this dependency, because remember, whatever, if you take the Webster dictionary, you read the word drug, equal substance which creates addiction and dependency. And the nightshades are exactly this, only they have also some side effects on the emotional level, mental level, attitudes. For example, the tomato is giving you the shifting from emotions without filter. In fact, if you study in Italy the culture of the masks, in Italy there is a beautiful traditional culture. Each town has a mask, a characteristic. And the mask of Naples is called the Pulcinella, is a sort of Pierrot, and is very famous because he's laughing and immediately after he's crying. He's loving you, and the second after is angry with you. So it's always, and that's exactly what the tomato, for example, do. And they get also amplified with other food like the alcohol, the sugar, the cheese and everything. By the way, another thing very important, if you study the nickname of the enlargement of the liver in the medicine, you know that in medicine they use sometimes the nickname to paint the sickness. The enlargement of the liver, the hepatomegaly, is also called Napolitaner liver from Naples, because Naples is very famous for the spaghetti with tomato, the tomato that you put on the pizza, also there is the aubergine parmigiana. So these things, they have an effect on your body that does not kill you immediately, but it develops slowly all the intoxication, which first affects you emotionally and then slowly becomes a real sickness. I had a client in New York, because in New York I was attending the best artist in the artist community 30 years ago, and now one of the greatest art dealer at the time, I had as a client the biggest art dealer in the world, and he was taking to me for the services the best artist in the world at that time. And one of these artists was Francesco Clemente, the founder of the modern avant-garde. And I remind you that he has received a movie played by Robert De Niro, was playing the father. And anyhow, Francesco Clemente came to me in 1994. And then when they opened the Guggenheim Foundation in Bilbao, they opened with all the works of all his life as an exhibition. And they made his biography in a book, which is, maybe I don't see Giovanni, but I can ask later, I can show you. It's a book thick like this, with all the paintings and all the biography year by year. And then up to 94, he was complaining about his health, and he was thinking he was going to die because he was very sick. Then in 94, he came to me and brought by his curator. And in 1 week, taking the direction, giving him the treatments and the direction of what to do and what not to do, he obliged to the biography to be written that in 94 his life took a big change, and from that moment on his life has been much better and very healthy. He wanted to do this to acknowledge me, and if you go in his biography of the year 94, you will find half a page dedicated to me. But then I was going to New York many years, and I was going to his place. He lives in the Village, in Bleecker Street. And he was giving me the apartment at the 4th floor, so I could give the treatment to his family, plus I could see my client there. And another couple of very great art dealers and curators, they came one day in 2001. It was June 2001. They came asking me if I could do something for their masseur. Was the best masseur in New York. He was 33 years old, and he was sick, and they gave him 2 months of life because of liver condition. Then I started immediately to recognize my situation when I was 21. So I say, okay, tell him to come and I can give him a look. When he came, I remember he was totally hopeless, and he said, what can you do? I know you already give a vegan diet. I am vegan from my birth. So I say, okay, you're vegan from your birth, but maybe you can do some mistakes. Tell me, what have you eaten today at lunch? And he said, tomato soup. Okay. What have you eaten last night? Potato soup. Oh my God. And then maybe you remember what you have eaten last lunch, yesterday lunch. Oh yes, tomato. So I said, but you eat only tomato soup and potato soup. And he said, that's the only thing my body accepts. Say, okay, so the doctors are right. If you go on like this, in 2 months, maybe 3, you will die. Because I had the same, and a change in my diet in terms of avoiding the tomato. Also, I was eating at that time also some animal food like ice creams and cheese and cakes. So I said, you do this. Oh, I cannot. Impossible. Okay, as you like. You prefer to sacrifice your life to the nightshades. Do this. Only I tell you, be careful, because when you stop this food, your body has to clean of all the intoxication, and you will have headache, cold sweat, feeling dying. That's what I already experienced, So I told him all this, and then I left, and I say, if you do what I'm saying, because I was going there every 5-6 months to New York, we will see in next autumn, and you will tell me what's happened. But then there was the September 11, 2001, and everything was like the COVID for me in Japan. After the COVID, I am waiting to go back. It's too much. So, excuse me. That's okay.
Can I stop you there? We need to stop at 11:30 because I've got an appointment. But we love what you're saying, and we'd love you to come back and share more. You've got so much wisdom, and there's so many questions I'd like to ask you and people to know. But I suppose the best thing to ask at this moment in time is, what is the best way people can help their liver or cleanse their liver? But you're muted.
Oh, sorry.
First,
I did it. Sorry.
First, you have to stop giving the intoxicants. So that's the first way, not to put the poison again into the liver. And the poison for the liver are, of course, number one is the nightshade, especially the tomato. Then coffee, alcohol, especially the dairy products. Then walnuts, for the liver, are not good. Then what else? Then you just take me off balance. I have to tell you all what I should remember. I gave a flyer probably to your sister in which there is written not only the liver, all the food that should be avoided, all the processed, chemically processed food, like MSG, monosodium glutamate, MSG, then microwaved food.
So what do you eat a day? What is your diet?
Okay, my diet, it depends. This morning I had orange squash, and I get 2 toasts with a very good cold pressed oil, organic margarine instead of butter on the toast, and then a beautiful blueberry and raspberry jam made by my sister. This was my breakfast. Today I maybe eat or pasta or rice with vegetables, and sometimes I eat the seitan, but made in a proper way. We have to enter very clearly to explain to people that you cannot undertake a food direction if you don't know certain things, and then the people get frustrated, they get upset. But very important is also to eat what your body is asking. But if your body is asking, or a McDonald's or Burger King, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Coca-Cola, whatever, Baskin Robbins, this is not good. This is addiction already. So you cannot stay without it because you have become already addicted to this. But if you can already change, and then I also suggest people to use herbs, because also this is a huge department in which we use the herbs not as they are used only for the cleaning. For example, for the liver, very good is dandelion, is this is called thistle, anyhow. And then there is artichoke, chelidonium. These are the herbs which help a lot the liver, so you should use these herbs. At the same time, you should not eat the wrong food. Also, what is important is that when you start to do this, immediately or maybe later, you can have reactions. For example, people who stop to drink coffee, if they are very strong drinkers, they can suffer for a period big headaches. So in this, we can help them with some herbs again, plus some treatments, reflexology, connective tissue, and also you can use the natural agents like steam baths, sauna, cold plunge. There are many things that we can do in order to increase the body power to return to the normality. But it has to be very clear that practically all the time, before reaching the balanced level of your health, you have to cross the period of detox. The detox, which is not what they do. They do 3 days and then they go back to the usual thing. You have to stay and use your body like you use your car, putting always the right gasoline and not changing when you want the gasoline and make the you upset the structure.
Fantastic. So you're in Glass. For people that want to have an appointment with you or Giovanni, Jeff's got a flyer that if you put up.
Yes, exactly, it is.
We're giving a talk on Monday the 19th of May.
Yes.
So all the information's there. So if people want a session with you or Giovanni, they can contact Pauline through Natural Life System.
Yes.
Or Pretty Pauline on the at the bottom there is her telephone number. So and I know I had a session with you and it was a very painful session.
Which means that your body wants to stay alive, but you still do some little mistakes.
Yes, but I've been correcting them. So
Let's see the next.
Yeah, yes. So I've been bringing in lots of different things and doing lots of different herbs. And so gradually I'm changing things. So anyway, it's been an absolute delight having you on the show. It really has. And to see you again. And we'll talk later about if you'd like to come back and share some more, because we haven't touched on anything yet. And there were so many different questions and but truly blessed with all the information that you've shared so far. So would you come back another time?
Yes, of course. I
Perfect.
feel I'm
Thank
welcome,
you.
and for me, my work is also to spread this kind of informations, because this is my way to give this message to the people. You know, it's through my personal experience. So I cannot say I studied this. I studied after. First, I had to do the experience. So wherever you can find the data, you can also speak with Pauline, or we can meet.
I'll have a word. And I have got some of your posters about foods not to have, so I'll find them and I'll put them up in a minute, bit later today.
Very
so
good.
People can have a look. So I'll do that.
And we'd like to have Australia too, by the way.
Pardon?
We'd like to have them in Australia as well.
Wow,
flyer?
Thank you.
No, him personally.
Oh, personal, right. Yeah, because Pauline's got a lot of relatives in Australia.
Yes.
All right.
We will be delighted. Me and Giovanni, we can come, and if you can take advantage of our way to deal with our matter, it's very helpful and very convenient. You know.
Okay. Well, thank you once again for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. It's been an absolute delight, and I look forward to talking with you and seeing you in Glastonbury in a couple of weeks. And and thank you everybody for tuning in this week, and it's same time, same place next week.
Thank you, and have a good life. Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you.